So welcome everybody to the March 23rd meeting of the Park and Recreation Commission. It's nice to see you all. It's a beautiful evening. I believe it's the first day of spring as of this weekend. We're moving into the orange tier tomorrow, and Stanford women are playing basketball right now in March Madness. So all seems to be good. So Lom, could I ask you to call the roll, please?
Yes. Chair Cribbs,
Here.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Here.
Commissioner Brown,
Here.
Commissioner Moss.
Here.
I'm sorry, Vice Chair Greenfield,
Here.
Commissioner Olson, not present. Commissioner Recknall, not present.
Okay, thank you very much. May I ask if there are any agenda changes, requests, or deletions? Hearing none, we can move on to oral communications. Lama, if there are any members of the public who would like to speak on anything other than what's on the agenda tonight.
Yes, we do have one public speaker who has raised her hand. Speaker is Rebecca Saunders. And Rebecca, give me a moment here. I'm gonna set up a timer and to provide you with 2 minutes of speaking time here. Rebecca, if you would unmute, you may begin.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Becky Saunders and I live in Ventura. I have 2 comments for you tonight, so I'll strive for brevity. Even though we are so excited to see Bulwer Park expanded, it's not enough for Ventura now, nor for Ventura when a development endorsed by PTC will garner us 2,000 new residents and 800 new workers, and no park. I was very discouraged to see the outcome after 2 years of working group input from the PTC advancing this high density proposition with no meaningful parkland. So also neighborhood input working group, I think only one person on the working group actually voted for the high density option. So I'm asking you Parks and Rec people to please write herd on council for us and please corral us a park at the Fry's development. It's just not fair to starve us of a place to play when it is such a need, as you know, a necessity for human well-being. So thank you so much for hearing me on that issue. And then this is just some housekeeping. I was running around this morning at the corner of Page Mill and El Camino at about 7:45. I noticed that the parking lot for the soccer field had quite a number of cars in it, maybe 1/3 full, but only like 3 guys were on the soccer field. So I was just wondering if the vehicles might belong to workers in the area, and maybe you're leasing that parking out for the construction workers over there on 2755 El Camino. But I just want to remind you to help us support parking for the people using the parks, because there actually would be no place to play if enough players arrived to field 2 teams for even one of the fields. So I found that concerning, and maybe the city is making a little money on the side, but just wanted to bring that to your attention. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I believe that finishes oral communications, and thank you very much for comments. Darren, can we go to the department report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We thought we would start with sharing a video. If you can stop share on the timer, Lom. Thank you very much. I wanted to share a video. This was shared with council last night, and this is community wellness and well-being with the number of programs that the city has implemented this last year. Bear with me just a second. So that video was
Karen,
shared.
Before you go on, excuse me for interrupting, and that was a great video to show. It really warms everybody's heart to see that in the middle of COVID. So thanks to everybody for doing that. And again, sorry to interrupt, but I evidently missed a hand that was up during public comment. So I wonder if we could go and ask that speaker to come back and listen to the comments. So I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you, Chair. We have a next speaker is Angela D. And Angela, if you give me one moment here, let me set up a timer.
Thank you. I apologize. I looked earlier and didn't see a second hand.
Angela, if you would please unmute, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I was 1 minute late logging on, so that was my fault. I apologize. So I just, can I start now? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want to say is, well, okay, I'll just read what I have written down. And then I know that the Parks and Recreation Commission is separate from the PTC, and but I want to say just something about parks in general. Palo Alto is well known for its high quality of living and for its beautiful parks, even in parts of the city where residents' homes sit in large park-like gardens. Palo Alto's public parks welcome everyone to gather, relax, listen to music, and play together. So while an urgent need for housing is driving the city to waive its development standards in order to approve the construction of more dense multifamily buildings in the North Ventura area, something I support, little attention is being paid to the park acreage necessary for these new residents. Palo Alto should probably enjoy at least as much recreation space as, say, a resident of San Francisco has. Residents of San Francisco have 4.22 acres of public space per public park space per 1,000 residents. And every resident of San Francisco lives within a 10-minute walk of a public park. The same cannot be said for Palo Alto, which has only 2.67 acres per 1,000 residents. That's 2.67 versus the 4 recommended by the comp plan. If thousands of new residents do come to live in the south end of Palo Alto, including the Ventura neighborhood, the need for acres of new public parkland will become even more acute than it is now. I don't believe that Palo Alto residents would support the practice of crowding its less wealthy citizens into small areas and providing no public amenities such as public parks. Thank you very much.
Public speakers.
So that's all. Okay, thank you so very much. And Darren, back to you. Thank you again.
Sure, thank you, Chair. The other updates I wanted to provide also having to do with information that was shared with council the other night. I wanted to share about Wellness Wednesdays. These are different ways for the community to connect with wellness, and you can find this website by Googling City of Palo Alto, Be Well and Stay Safe. These Wellness Wednesdays are every third Wednesday at 5 p.m. and they're recorded so you could watch them even after they've passed. The upcoming one in April will be on earthquake preparedness, and in May it'll be teen mental health. I also want to provide you an update on the Mayfete Parade. We are going to do it this year. It's going to be different than in years past. It's going to be a video of past Mayfete parades, and the mayor is going to speak on it. And the theme would be, What a Wonderful World. And it's a call for people to decorate their homes and their yards and their businesses leading up to that first Saturday in May. There'd be a map of this route where people can walk it and bike it and see these decorated houses. More details to come soon, but there would be a big video shared on May 1st, and there would be a parade in the sense that you could drive around and walk around to look at these decorated areas, and it would be a virtual event on the day of. Other programming updates, there's tentative plans for movies in the park and musical performances in the park, certainly pending what COVID allows for, but that's coming soon and more information will be coming to you on that. Library and CSD has been offering teen programs, and we're continuing the teen leadership program. I know that's always a subject of importance and interest for the commission. I don't have the details tonight, but I'd be glad to bring those at upcoming meetings. There's also a new program coming out through the libraries. It's a donation of laptops to community members who need them. And this is in partnership with Hewlett Packard, where if you donate a laptop, they will wipe it clean and see that it gets used by someone who's in need. On the COVID topic, I wanted to update you that Santa Clara County, as the chair had mentioned, is moving to the orange tier tomorrow. And that means capacity limits for indoor activities will increase, and the types of sports allowed will be broadened. Registration for spring classes is now open, and summer camp registration opens on April 1st for residents and April 8th for non-residents. We're safely offering over 120 in-person summer camp sessions following all the county health guidelines. CSD has decided to hold off on allowing indoor rentals to the public until the county does enter the orange and possibly yellow tier. So for those indoor rentals, we're still working on that and not ready yet to rent them. Adult recreational groups are allowed to start back up as long as they meet the state and county guidelines. An update on impact fees. The commission looked at this not too long ago, and it was tentatively scheduled to go to council, and it got moved. It's now on target for April 12th to go to city council. And at that same time, a colleague's memo referring the Parks and Recreation Commission, the review of a new skate park. And that also had been pushed from the March 15th date to April 12th. I wanted to make you aware of some activity happening at the Baylands. This is tomorrow, March 24th. The County of Santa Clara Vector Control District will be conducting an aerial treatment for salt marsh mosquitoes and the western equine mosquitoes in the Palo Alto flood basin. The treatment is scheduled to start approximately 7:30 a.m. and last a few hours. And this method allows for targeted and effective application for the difficult to reach areas of the marsh. And the treatment will use naturally occurring microbes and mosquito-specific hormone the district has been using for over 25 years. There will be temporary closure of the trails going around the flood basin. However, the rest of the preserve will be open. And if anyone had questions about this, they could reach out to Vector Control. I'm going to give their phone number real quickly in case anyone watching is interested in calling them for more details. It's 408-918-4770. And that's Vector Control, who's available for calls Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. At the council meeting last night, council reviewed CIPs planned for FY21. And council directed staff to reduce those FY21 capital budget by $2.5 million. Staff from multiple departments are meeting this week to discuss options for how that might look like. Sorry, I don't have details to share this evening on that, but more information to come. Council also reviewed and approved the Ramos Park Improvement Ordinance, excluding a fence that had been associated with the dog park. The Park Improvement Ordinance, or PIO, had moved on in advance of us determining that a dog park would not be a good fit for Ramos. And council struck that part from the plan, but otherwise moved forward. However, the preceding item they discussed, which was those reduction in overall capital programs for FY21, may mean that only a portion of the improvements called out actually happen. Again, that'll be determined soon as staff works on this. And Chair, that concludes the department report.
Great, thank you. Thank you very, very much. I'm really happy that the Mayfet Parade will continue in a form. So great work on that and all of it. Do any of the commissioners have any questions for Darren specifically about the report?
Yeah, I have one quick question. The vector control, is it also going to spray Renzel Pond area or just the marsh?
We've only identified the flood basin. So
The
that's
flood basin is the one behind you, behind the offices, or is it?
that's right. Yeah, it's between there. It's large. That's a 600-acre area. So very, very large. It's completely levied off, and it's between Mountain View shoreline and, as you noted, either the back of Bixby or the MSC offices for that area.
All right, what about near the Lucy Evans Nature Center or the Lauermeyer tract?
No, it won't be over by any of those spots. Not by the Duck Pond, the Nature Center, or the Faber-Laumeister tract.
Or the golf course?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, well, we can move on then to the business of today. So the first item is the approval of the draft minutes from February 11th. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
And a second?
A second.
And any discussion? Okay, Darren or Lam, can you take a vote, please?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Chair Cribs.
Thank you.
Voting on the motion to approve the minutes. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
and the motion passes on a 6-0 vote.
Thank you. So let's move to item number 2, the approval of draft minutes from February 23rd, 2021. Is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve those minutes.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? And again, Lam, will you take a vote, please?
Yes. This is a vote for motion to approve minutes for February 23rd, Parks and Recreation Commission meeting. Chair Cribs,
Yes.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemaire,
Yes.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
and the motion passes on a 6-0 vote.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, moving right along to item number 3, and everybody can see that we have 120 minutes devoted to this item and the discussion. So we have some work to do tonight. The goal is to pass the motion recommendation to the City Council. I also want to make sure that we hear recommendations from the Ad-Hoc. I want to make sure that all of the commissioners have a chance to present their thoughts as well, in case there needs to be a little tweaking of the motions. And then at the end of our discussion, I think the goal is to pass a single motion. So with that, I will turn it over to Darren. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Darren Anderson again from Community Services Department. This is an action item regarding the Foothills Park policies. I thought I'd start with just a recap with the brief update on the recent visitation at Foothills Park. So from January 1st to March 18th only, and this is 2021, approximately 83,500 visitors in 41,500 vehicles that entered Foothills Park. 62% of that visitation was on weekends and holidays, 37.6% on the weekdays. And during that same time frame, again, only January 1st to March 18th in 2020, there were 29,000 visitors and 15,000 cars. So that 2021 visitation is 194% higher than the same period in 2020. At our February 23rd commission meeting, we reviewed and discussed a range of Foothills Park policy considerations, some of which had been recently adopted by council, but had not previously been commented on the PRC. The PRC agreed to support some guidelines while referring additional details back to the Ad-Hoc committee for additional assessment and follow-up recommendation. The Foothills Park Ad-Hoc committee met 4 times to discuss these policies. We grouped policy considerations into 4 different categories. Policies to include in the March 23rd recommendation, policies adopted by City Council and supported by the PRC, but not previously commented on the PRC. Potential Foothills policy updates that had been reviewed by the PRC, but are not included in these current recommendations, that these may be reconsidered in future recommendations. And the 4th category, the parks and open space policies that are broader than just Foothills Park, and that we review and consider these for a future recommendation. After further consideration by the Vice Chair, Chair, and I, we believe it would be best to include all of these into one recommendation motion to Council. And the Vice Chair helped put together a draft motion that I'll share shortly that I think will help serve as a great starting point for the PRC to make and vote on a motion this evening. That first category that we talked about includes policies that the PRC recommends that Council take action on to implement changes. And these are regarding the large vehicles. This is over 9-person capacity, the free park days, the free vehicle entry for student groups with a reservation, free passes available at the Palo Alto libraries, free Foothills Park annual pass for 4th grade students, and the removal of the 9 hillside barbecues for fire safety. We discussed these at our last meeting, and the ad hoc thinking on each of these is listed in the staff report, so I won't go over them in my presentation. The second category is the policies adopted by City Council and supported by, but not previously commented on the PRC. So these are the use of the term vehicle entrance fee versus parking fee, the $6 entrance fee for vehicles with up to 9-person passenger capacity, the free entry for vehicles with disabled persons license plate or placards, and the pedestrian and cyclists entering Foothills not counted towards the visitor capacity and not charged an entrance fee. The third category that the PRC, these are policies the PRC reviewed and does not currently recommend making any changes to. However, they recommend investigating and further reviewing these through the calendar year 2021. And that's the visitor reservation system that we've again talked about before, the dog policies, and the daily fee waivers. And the 4th category, again, is those park and open space policies to review that are broader, that still may affect Foothills Park and would just be considered slightly different because they do carry over to so many other areas. And the Ad-Hoc committee had identified Foothill Park concerns that are governed by these broader policies. And the Ad-Hoc committee recommends that the committee, the Ad-Hoc that is, review these policies and return to PRC at a later date with updated recommendations. And it's the photography and videography policy, special event permits, gathering permits for group over 25, groups of 24 or fewer with no reservations or permit required, and then a special request interpretive program for things like canoe rentals and ranger talks. And lastly, I just wanted to provide an update on the environmental monitoring and data. I know this is an area of great importance to the commission, and as it is to the Ad-Hoc as well. The Ad-Hoc reiterated that they support the monitoring efforts being performed by grassroots ecology and the open space staff, as well as the work that's being done by the stakeholder group. That stakeholder group consists of representatives from grassroots ecology, Friends of Foothills Park, the Environmental Volunteers, Stanford University Haas Center for Public Service, Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve, Los Altos Hills, and the chair and vice chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission. That stakeholder group has got 3 initiatives right now I just wanted to share with you. One is developing a 5-minute video that would help educate visitors on the principles of leave no trace, how to recreate in Foothills Park responsibly, and how to prepare and make the most out of a trip to the preserve. The group's also working on establishing a trail ambassador program through a partnership with the environmental volunteers. And the goal of that program is to provide volunteer-led engagement of Foothills Park visitors, expanding their knowledge and sparking interest in the park, as well as providing helpful information and resources and encouraging environmental stewardship. A third initiative that the stakeholder group has been working on is a list of infrastructure improvements aimed at protecting the habitat and improving visitor safety and experience. We had finished 2 walkthroughs with the broader group to look at the infrastructure. We're collating all that information, creating a little sample draft of what that would look like. And the next step is to meet and confer with our planning department to talk that through and get a better understanding of what kind of CEQA process and timeframes for additional reviews would be necessary for which components. And I say that what I mean is there might be some elements of improvements, such as a certain section of fencing to protect habitat that could move forward in the near term, whereas there may be other sections like certain parking lot improvements and installation of pedestrian pathways that might be a little longer term and require some more environmental review. The Ad-Hoc also recommend that the city prioritize a capital improvement project to create a comprehensive conservation plan for the Foothills Park as soon as it's economically feasible. They further recommend that the stakeholder group recommendations be discussed with the commission for feedback and be incorporated into an interim environmental management strategy. And just to explain that just a little bit, I think to juxtapose the two, on one hand, you've got something like a conservation plan, a comprehensive conservation plan, where we'd be hiring a consultant. It would be a very lengthy process. The Ad-Hoc was thinking of this other endeavor as being a scaled back version that could be implemented a little bit quicker, not require quite so much expenditure for a contractor or time to implement. And lastly, the Ad-Hoc committee also recommends that staff form partnerships with universities and community colleges for environmental research and study, as well as seek out advice and assistance on environmental monitoring from regional land management agencies like Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District and others. And just a recap of the tentative timeframe, May 2021 is when council could, in theory, if we get on their agenda, review the recommendation that you make this evening. And then we would come back to the Parks and Recreation Commission on July of this year to continue our discussions on Foothills Park policy. You might recall at the February 22nd council meeting, council's motion included a request for the PRC to return to council with an update in August. And Chair, I'm going to close the PowerPoint and open up the draft motion and just very quickly walk the commissioners through this, if that's all right.
Yes, that's fine.
Bear with me just a moment. Okay, can you see my screen all right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, good.
Great. I just want to acknowledge and thank the vice chair again for putting this together. The beginning, and I'm just going to scroll down slowly. The beginning of this, or 1, as you can see, mirrors what we had, or very closely mirrors what we had in the staff report. So that's the large vehicle policy and the pricing recommended by the Ad-Hoc and the additional details related to that. It's got the free vehicle entrance days. And this reflects a lot of the thinking that we had from the broader group with the Ad-Hoc honing in on this. And as soon as I conclude my presentation here, I'm sure the Ad-Hoc could add details to some of their thinking, though it was included in your staff report. It's got the free free vehicle entrance for student groups with valid reservations. And it's got the up to 10 passes for the libraries. It's got the free 4th grade annual pass.
Mhm.
And then it's got the recommendation to remove those hillside barbecues. The new sections relate to what we had just talked about, that these other categories that we wanted to include into the recommendation. So council knows that we're working on it and supports that if that's what they want and directs us to do so. And so these different categories, the second boxes that we had talked about, are captured here in this motion. And Chair, that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you very much, Darren. That was great. I really appreciate that. We go back to scroll to the top of the motion. We get down to from 1 to the second Roman numeral. That's the motion that we really want to pay attention to. But then we want to add for discussion the other 3 motions and vote on everything at the end, just to clarify, right?
Yes.
So what I'd like to do now is to go to ask Lama if there are any members of the public who have their hand up to speak on this item. And then if the commission, well, then we'll go to the ad hoc and then the rest of the commissioners. And if you have those clarifying questions, let's wait until we get further through. So Lama, any members of the public?
Chair, we do not have any members of the public wishing to speak.
Okay, I don't have any on my list either, which is probably the same list. So, okay, so that's fine. Thank you very much. So let's go now to the ad hoc. I'd like to compliment the ad hoc. I know that many hours have gone into discussions. I think that what you've all come up with is really good. I'd like to thank the vice chair for all of his additional work as well. And I'd also like to acknowledge the past ad hoc committees who did so much work over the past 2 years on this to set the groundwork. So Jackie, as a member of the longer standing member of the ad hoc, would you like to comment?
Sure. I will say that we really tried our best to be thoughtful in all the different areas and come up with all the, various parameters, thinking about 4th grade, for example, like when does that begin? When does that end? Should it, be a whole year from the moment you sign up or just during that school year? And, we really did try to think through all the different variables that we could think of, but we are 3 people and you are a lot more. So we certainly welcome any other input or identification of some things that we didn't point out.
Happened.
And I have my fellow commissioner, junior commissioner with me.
Mom,
Sorry.
Guess what?
Thank you very much. David, Commissioner Moss, would you like to comment?
I want to echo everything that Jackie said. It's a whole lot of work. And the other thing I want to mention is that, or emphasize, is that this is not all, and that a number of these are, we were torn because we need to get something to the commission, to the council as quickly as we can. So we were trying to figure out what are the things we could deal with right now. And some of them may need to be tweaked by the end of the summer, by the end of the year, but we need to be able to give the council something to vote on right away and then come back with things that tweaks that may happen later. So this is not the end all be all. And there's a lot of this was based not on long periods of collecting data, because we don't have it yet. So we did the best we could. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
Great, thank you. Vice Chair Greenfield?
Yes, thank you. I'll definitely share the sentiments of my fellow commissioners and on the ad hoc. And this is an ongoing process, and this is one step along in the process. And as Commissioner Moss said, we're really focused on doing what we can do right now and recognizing that this isn't everything, and a lot of decisions need to be made after we have an opportunity to analyze more data and see how things work out. It's going to be an iterative process. And I think it's important for everybody to understand that within the commission and the community. I think for most of the primary recommendations for changes that we're encouraging at this point and recommending, they're focused on providing accessibility to specific target groups and also listening to feedback that we've heard from council members and members of the community in terms of ideas on how to expand accessibility and make Foothills Park and soon to be Foothills Nature Preserve open and accessible, and trying to consider this in an equitable manner. There's lots of different considerations and many options, but again, focusing on what we can do, and look forward to hearing from the rest of the commission for your ideas to further progress this along. And it's a group effort, and look forward to your feedback, and happy to answer any questions in terms of what we're thinking on things, why we included something, why we didn't include other things, that kind of thing.
Okay,
So
thank you. Thank you very much. Let's go to the other commissioners. Commissioner Brown.
I know a lot of work. So I really compliment the ad hoc committee and Darren and everybody involved in this. It's clear that a lot of thought went into this. So everything that I read, I understand and I sort of agree with, and it sort of dovetailed off of our discussion of work planning. When I look at the added sections of sort of what has been reviewed but is not included in the recommendation or what's moving forward, those read to me like a work plan for the ad hoc committee for the next year or 2 years. And so I was sort of going back and forth as everyone was talking about, well, should this really be in the work plan document that gets presented to council and then gets adopted? Because they really are, I feel like in my mind, that's where they belong. However, in the spirit of transparency and seeing Foothills Park on the council agenda and getting that opportunity to be able to have it just one more place for the public to be able to see what's coming down the pipeline, I actually think it's a very well thought out strategy. And I think that it would be fine to have it in both places. I would just suggest, as a non-member of the ad hoc committee, that whatever is included here sort of it gets mirrored in the work plan. Maybe that was sort of the idea, but great job.
Great, good suggestions. Thank you. Thank you very much. And Jeff, Commissioner Lemaire, as the longest running member or the oldest member of the ad hoc, the Foothill Ad Hoc, would you have any additional comments?
Only to thank the new ad hoc for what they've put together, and certainly thank staff and Darren for all the time that they have spent on this. But I'd also, I guess I'm appreciative of the process. I really think that we have tried to do justice to this complicated problem and tried to really keep in mind the welfare of the park and the nature. And I think the time that we're spending on it is time very well spent. And so I just like to compliment everybody and the public input and the city council's interest as well in this, because it's such a important topic and an important part of our city.
Yeah, I think that is very well said, Jeff. As I was reading through it once again, I was thinking about how well this is balanced, the access, the visitor experience, the care for the environment, for the animals and for the plants. I'm excited about the opportunities and the partnerships with environmental groups and resources that we have with colleges and universities. I'm really excited about the planning for the future once all of these details get nailed down. And I'm very glad to see that we've included coming back to the council in probably September, and then coming back again in the end of the year, just because I think when we have the data or some of the data that we need, it will serve everybody better in terms of future decisions. But kudos to the staff and all of the work, and to the ad hoc as well. So Darren, do you think, to just quickly, or not quickly, but thoughtfully go through the first part of the motion and make sure, I mean, I don't think we need to read it out loud, but just to put it up there and go through it and make sure that nobody has any questions or comments, or that the ad hoc doesn't want to add something specific, or if there's questions about why did you decide this about this? Shall we do that?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, so let's start with number 1. And the first piece is the comments on the vehicle entrance fee. And everybody is understanding of that and okay with it. Comments? Okay, everybody seems to agree.
I just want to make one comment that the reason we put those 3 bullets under the $60 per vehicles 25 and over is that having a permit is pretty important. We don't want tour buses, unpermitted tour buses coming in and bringing, 50 people in unannounced. That's why we put those in there.
Well, I think that from my perspective, that was really smart to do, because I can't remember seeing a giant tour bus ever in Foothill Park. And I'm Foothill Preserve. I don't know if one got in, how one would get out. I mean, certainly school buses, but those big buses, and certainly that's not something that was the intention. So this is a good way to do this, I think. Any other thoughts about that?
I would also just add that what Commissioner Moss has talked about is consistent with current policy, where a group of 25 or more people isn't permitted into the preserve without a permit, without a gathering permit. And this is really stating it more clearly and trying to clarify and illustrate this requirement to the public.
Good. I also like it that we're not discounting or providing free entry other than students. I think that's a good thing to call out. I wanted to go back to the $6 for the vehicle fee, which is consistent with the other parks, county parks. And I think it's good for us to be in that same price range. We've talked about that before, so no need to say it again. Darren, can you move down a little bit, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. So Darren, maybe you can provide some background about the choices for this, and then the ad hoc can comment about how you finally landed on this, because I know we discussed it in February.
Yeah, the ad hoc conversation was similar to the group conversation, the whole commission conversation, in that we bounced around and went back and forth about when Palo Alto School is out of session. Would this allow someone the opportunity during summer to come visit, but not put too many summer weekends in play where it might be too crowded? So it was an effort to keep it at 6, which the ad hoc felt was the right number. And again, is consistent with the existing national program that we're sort of mirroring this off of. And at the same time, spreading it out more than we originally proposed. And the ad hoc, I'm sure, can add some details around the specific days.
Yeah, we were trying to debate, well, should we have 7 and add a Sunday? And we realized really just having a Saturday, a weekend is important. And also we had them lumped up so that there were more early in the year, and we decided to spread it out like this. And so we could have added one in November or December, November, but this is sort of what we came up with. And I think our biggest discussion was when in the summer, not if, but when in the summer should we have one day without really compromising things. And we wanted it to be after school ended and before school got back in session. So this is how we compromised.
Good work. The next one, point number 3, in talking about opening the park, for me, this was always a really important thing to be able to offer to students. So I really like the way that this has been handled. Any other comments? Okay, so moving to the entry passes from the libraries, has that been, well, the libraries aren't open yet, so it hasn't been implemented that, but the libraries are okay with that, Darren, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I had a conversation with library staff, and they were extremely gracious and willing to assist. And they agreed to I think the model that the commission had hoped for, which is that you wouldn't have to check out a pass and have to come back and return it. Instead, they'll be able to print it for you. You can pick it up at the library, but it's good for one particular day. And then you can discard it after that because it's a single use pass. That allows us to maximize the available passes so they're not out and unavailable waiting for someone to return it. And B, it also protects us from the COVID challenges of returning and having to sanitize something. It's just far more efficient. And the library staff is again willing to make that work.
That's great. And I suspect that once this gets put into motion, there's going to be a great display in the libraries of environmental sustainability and flora and fauna and Foothill Park and all of that at Foothill Preserve. So knowing librarians who are so great at that. The free Foothill annual pass for 4th grade students, maybe you can talk a little bit more about that because I think that's very exciting.
Yes, again, this is another one that was mirrored off a national park program, and I believe it was suggested by Councilmember Cormack in one of the council meetings. And we did some homework. I think the Ad-Hoc did some good homework in finding the details out and how we could make it available. The challenge was a little different, perhaps, in that this would be an annual pass that they would be eligible to pick up, and that they would need the student in the car. As you could see, another key part was the conversation around how would we phrase when this is available and when it would be good. I thought the Ad-Hoc did a good job of coming up with the terminology that they'd be valid for one school year ending on August 31st, following the student's 4th grade year. It was our best effort to try to add a little clarity while still having some flexibility.
Great. Any other comments?
Yeah, the key thing with this in number C is when do you offer these? And when can you when are they done? And you set a thing in the stand that says you can go from August 15th to August 15th or whatever. So this is the best we could do.
Think it works? Okay, Darren, if we could move a little bit.
Sorry, something else I'd like to add real quickly is one of the important considerations for these different options for increasing accessibility was to consider the park management side of things and how this impacts the rangers staff for enforcement of entrance fees and things like that. And it's really much preferable for cars to have something to place in their dashboards, particularly on weekdays when the entrance station won't be manned and where people will be purchasing a ticket at a kiosk if they've paid. But if they haven't paid and they've come in by some free means, it's important for the rangers to have some means of distinguishing who doesn't need to have a pay stub in their car. Some sort of annual pass that makes this much more apparent. So that was a consideration of the Ad-Hoc.
Great. The barbecues. I think we've had this discussion for a really long time, and it's really good to see it made into a motion. Any other comments?
This was something that we talked about at our last meeting, and the commission seemed to be in support of this.
Many last meetings, yes. I think everybody was very much in support. Okay, so that dispenses with the first set. Let's go to the second set. Questions or comments?
one thing that I would observe real quickly here is that all of these items were discussed at the
Yes,
last Foothills item, with the exception of not charging the entry fee to bicycles and pedestrians. That was something that wasn't specifically discussed at the previous meeting. So the second half of Part D, but otherwise A, B, C, and the first half of Part D are things we've covered already.
And I think all of these could be up for review at the end of the summer or at the end of the year.
yeah, good point, David. Yeah, which is why it's great that we have those 2 checkoff points or check-in points.
And it's also worth highlighting that this is commenting on interim policy that City Council has
Correct.
adopted. So it's appropriate so that it can become a permanent policy.
Okay, I think we can move to number 3. Darren, do you have any additional comments on this?
I think we talked about it a little bit.
Good.
There's one part I guess is worth reiterating. I mentioned in that stakeholder group, we've got Los Altos Hills staff with us, and they're helping think through challenges. They shared with me recently some of the feedback from their residents. And I think it's germane to the previous one where we talked about pedestrians and cyclists coming in for free. Well, related to that issue, they've got a concern about, because it's free, it incentivizes people to park outside the park and walk in for free, which can impact our neighbors. And secondly, they thought a reservation system, which is part of this 3, or the third category here, would also help limit some of those problems of people potentially parking outside and walking in if there was a reservation system, and perhaps cut back on some of the crowding on Page Mill Road as well. We did share that we've been working on different ways to reduce the crowding, greater efficiencies at the entrance station, little things like a second card reader to get credit cards processed a little faster, the implementation hopefully soon of 10-minute parking, where we can have people who are paying by credit cards pull in, and just alleviate some of the pressure of vehicles backed up on Page Mill Road. But I did want to just mention that those were concerns of our neighbors in Los Altos Hills.
Yeah, and it's going to take some time, I think, to work that out, since so many people and jurisdictions and parties have to be involved in that.
Yeah.
And some of it is really outside what we do as a commission, because it has to do with traffic and enforcement, correct?
Yes, there's elements of all that, true.
And signage as well. So I think what's important is that it's good that this is on there, and there'll be some time for everybody who needs to have an opinion and do some research about that to get that done.
I would also comment further on the daily entry fee waivers. This is referring to a number of the waivers for free entry that council has already adopted, and some of these may be more appropriate to include later as a annual pass option, again, to address the staff concerns of how to enforce entry payment on weekdays, especially. Different things we could consider in the future maybe that some of the daily free entry without an annual pass would only apply on the weekends when the entrance gate is manned, or maybe an annual pass is required instead. But these are some considerations that we'll have to follow and see how things go with what we have. And this is just highlighting a specific group of policies that we'll want to keep an eye on.
I think this is all really important to have this in this motion. Darren, do you have a sense yet of whether you would make comment about a recommendation on this in as early as the fall, or wait until December in terms of a timeline for the staff?
Specifically for the daily fee waiver portion or all of this?
These three that are on here.
Uh,
And you don't have to have an answer right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's iterative, and I certainly think we would be monitoring all three
Mhm.
ongoing. And if it's ready and clear by the earlier review in July, for example, if we came to the PRC in July and we've got clear path forward on those and good information, I think it would make sense. And if not, continuing to do the research and waiting for more data and pursuing it later in the year, if necessary, would also be fine.
Yeah, I was just interested in if there was any timeline at this point. So thank you for that.
Sure.
I think it's important to highlight, as Darren mentioned, that our target for the next Foothills Park action potentially would be July for Parks and Rec, so that this would go to City Council in the August-September timeframe.
Right.
So while there's,
Yeah.
and it could be a little confusing, but just to keep it clear in people's minds, when we're talking about the fall to go to council, it's got to be going to the commission a couple months before that.
Okay.
I have another couple of comments. Certainly the visitor reservation system and the dog policy are near and dear to my heart. And I fully hope that as soon as we can, we'll pursue vigorously those two items. I don't want anybody to think that we didn't want to spend time with them or that we couldn't do with something immediately, that we didn't care. It's very important, those two. And I agree fully with the Los Altos Hills people about the visitor reservation system. I think it would be very valuable if we can make the technology work.
Mhm.
The big question, of course, is Los Altos Hills and Los Altos, who pay no money toward the upkeep of the park. They are the near neighbors, and they bring their dogs in and spend a lot of time in the park. Will be spending a lot of time in the park, more so than, say, East Palo Alto. So it's very important that we deal with those.
Any other comments about number 3? Okay, then let's move on, Darren, please.
Chair, if you don't mind, just a quick comment on the reservation system.
No.
I think it really is wise to do a little more research. I think rushing into one might cause some unintended consequences, such as exacerbating some of those problems we already talked about, of people coming to alternative entrances because they couldn't get a reservation. I just think it bears a little more thought, probably site visit to one of our neighbors that has a reservation program. We've talked to Santa Clara County Parks, who has one at Uvis, and picked their brains for details. But sometimes seeing it in person and really talking to someone out in the field to understand all the implications would be wise before adjoining one. And then the other takeaway we learned in that short conversation with Uvis County staff was that it does severely limit the number of people who get to come in, because you've got to err on the side of reduced numbers so that you don't exceed capacity via the reservation system. So just something to consider as we think about that one.
Yeah, thank you for that. Okay. Darren, I'm going to ask you once again, because today when we were talking about it, I had a little bit of confusion. So would you explain this first one just to make sure we're all clear about what we're doing?
Yeah, gladly. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
So these are the broader policies that affect beyond just Foothills Park and open space. So they're open space and parks policies. And the idea was, let's ask the council to direct us to work on this, because this one's beyond our current scope, if you will, of what we've been tasked with doing. But I think it's a lot of germane things, because of course there are requests and activity for videography and photography, and there are special event requests. So it is very much germane to what happens to Foothills. And all these things are likely to increase from where they were before, at least in terms of requests, now that our visitation is so much higher. So each of these ones has an existing policy around it, and the ad hocs looked at it, but it just became clear it begs a deeper look and a deeper dive into how these existing policies might impact Foothills Park. And is there any prudent policy choices we should put in to safeguard and make sure that we're doing our best to protect Foothills Park in these different ways and set us up for success, while at the same time making sure we're consistent with other areas of the city where we have these activities. And I also defer to the ad hoc on this one as well for their contribution to the conversation.
Yeah, these existing policies are for covering all of the city, all of the parks, all of the open spaces, and trying to tweak individual ones with Foothills in mind might have undue consequences to the other parks, urban parks, and other open spaces. So we had to be very delicate with these. And also, we right now, the rangers have a thankless job in that they have to monitor these and manage these permits. So when somebody comes to them for a group of 25 and over, or to do the group campsite, picnic area, they have a tremendous amount of discretion today about how to deal with these groups. And so far, over the years, they've been able to manage it. And we're just not sure in this next year whether they're going to, things are going to break. Maybe they can continue to do what they've been doing for the last 10 years, but in spite of a 197% increase in visitation, can they still do what they've been doing successfully? And we just don't know. And so therefore we left them alone. And we'll see, this is certainly one that we'll have to think about at the end of the summer for sure.
Okay, thank you. Jackie, any further comments about the policies?
No, I think that covers it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Yes, I'd just quickly add that we're aware of the potential impacts of the policies at other parks, but we didn't spend any time at this point researching what the impacts of changes would be at other parks. Really, this all came about by in the process of it's in the course of reviewing Foothills Park policy. We identified policies that weren't applicable just to Foothills Park, and so we kind of set these aside as out of scope and really not reasonable for us to address a recommendation given the accelerated timeframe that we're working on here. Also, some of these policies, in addition to reviewing them in general, we also want to look at increasing the transparency of the availability of these permits and the process, because a lot of these permit requests and program requests aren't easily accessible or discoverable to the members of the public. So that's part of what we'd like to review. And also there is a potential for prioritization of reservations for Palo Alto residents, 25% amount of time early before the reservations are open to the general public. So that's something we would want to consider when reviewing these policies as well.
Okay, well, that helps. I guess my concern, and I'm sure that it can be solved, is that that we continue to review the policies having to do with Foothill Park and get that solved and settled before expanding to reviewing all the policies in all the parks.
Well, I would add that this is specifically related to some Foothills Park policies, and I agree with what you're saying. It's important to keep our focus on Foothills.
Yeah.
It's possible that we could, with further research, choose to recommend that some policies diverge between Foothills Park and other parks and open space areas, or we might decide that it's really appropriate to consider a broader new policy for all of the areas. And the other thing I'd add is this work doesn't necessarily need to be included as part of the Foothills Park ad hoc. This could potentially be
No, correct.
a different ad hoc.
A different ad hoc and a different work plan. Yeah, good. Okay, well, that's helpful. Darren, I'd like to raise one more question before we go to a vote, because I think we're close to being ready to do that, and we're doing really well on our timing. I have my stopwatch running, just for you to know. But I'm wondering, did it make sense, or did you decide not to include anything about research, surveys, counting animals, counting plants? Did I miss that someplace?
No, that is not part of the body of the recommendation here.
Okay.
Chair, if I could add something, and then you're kind of feeding into my suggestion. I was inspired during Darren's presentation and considered something that we didn't include that we probably do want to include. And I would like to propose adding an item 5, which would be the Parks and Rec Commission recommends that council prioritize the funding of a comprehensive conservation plan for Foothills Park. But that's the wording I've come up with. Darren may have had something a little bit.
That's kind of along the lines of what I was asking about, Jeff, because there's a lot of, good work that's being done by a lot of people. And I think it's important that it gets both acknowledged, and we support that work, even though maybe it doesn't fit in this motion, but figuring it out using a comprehensive plan might cover it.
It was mentioned in his staff report to do with environmental monitoring and the stakeholders groups, which is a very important part of the work that's going to be done.
Yes.
Outside of the Parks and Rec Commission, that we will have to deal with when they make their recommendations. And of course, that comprehensive plan, or a short version, a quick version of a comprehensive plan, and a quick version, is certainly something that we're going to deal with. So putting something in here about that, but it's sort of not something that the ad hoc is going to be able to do by itself.
Other comments?
I think if we're asking for priorities, if we can have our wish list, I mean, I would love to have the head ranger role prioritized as well, because I think that's, even more important, I think, than this, only because we're still really trying to catch up.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So if we're creating our wish list, I would love to have that be at the top.
I think that's a great idea. And Darren, maybe you want to add an A and a B on that
Okay.
after prioritize or something.
And change park to preserve.
It's not a preserve yet.
It takes effect April 15th.
gosh, we're all getting used to it early.
I know.
Well, it is a preserve.
It is a preserve, though. That's true.
It always has been a preserve.
How does that read? Did I capture your thoughts, Commissioner Olson and Commissioner Greenfield?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wonder if we want to include as soon as economically feasible or not. It's- I'm open to other people's thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
just delete that.
I'd like to take it out.
And you can probably get rid of the semicolon at the end of A, just for consistency.
And move the V over. At least on my, yeah, there.
I wouldn't try to do that too hard.
Yeah, for some reason.
Okay, never mind. We won't try to do that right now. Okay. So any other comments from anybody?
So I'm going backwards a little bit to number 3, is that I don't know if we want to include language based on our discussion tonight about sort of analyzing the impacts to existing policies. Because to Darren's point, if we're looking at and doing a reservation system, maybe there needs to be changes to the pedestrian and bicyclist policy. So maybe just make that clear that there's sort of the consideration or analysis of the already adopted policies or the impact on this analysis. There's probably a much nicer way that maybe Vice Chair Greenfield and his excellent writing skills can figure out how to say that. But I just think that it's not just throwing more policies on, you're sort of looking at it holistically about how they all interact together. And so maybe we want to just make that clear for the public.
Can you also say that about number 4?
True.
I think that's a great idea. I think maybe it's just more general that we'll be reviewing all of. Do you want to call out specific policies that we will review, or really make mention that we'll be reviewing all current policies? And I'm not sure we need to, and maybe we don't need to say that, since council's already asked us to come back in August with an update. I totally appreciate the sentiment of what you're saying, and we need to do that, and we want to do that. I'm just not quite clear what the best way to fit that into a motion is, or if it's necessary.
Did we just lose Darren?
Yes, we did.
Did we?
Yeah.
Correct.
He's trying to fix his spacing and fell off.
Oh my,
Told him not to.
I warned him.
I shouldn't have asked for that, moving that space.
While we're waiting for him, I'll tell you my little junior co-commissioner came in because he lost a tooth. So that's what that commotion was.
Oh, that's exciting though.
Yeah, the tooth fairy's
That's
coming
very
tonight.
important.
Very important thing.
I'm curious what the current going rate.
What's the going rate? Yeah.
Man, it's been quite variable, but I think around $5. But yeah, it depends. He got two $2 bills last time.
That's great. Well, here's Darren back again.
My apologies.
We decided it was having to move the 5.
That's right. Okay. So we were looking at number 3 and trying to come up with language. Maybe you already came up with it while I was off, but something to acknowledge impacts or considerations to other existing policies. Any suggested language form you would like me to do here?
Well, I think we also said it applies to 4 as well.
Oh. Any suggestions for what you'd like?
I think
David,
that's
David,
fine.
not-
I'm personally, I just think it's important to include that it might not just be a blanket new policy. There might be some adjustment to other ones in order to make a new policy successful.
Okay.
So I think
David, I'm
that's
not
fine.
sure how this applies.
That wording would be that we'll recommend investigation and further review of these existing policies. In number 4, with consideration to further review of existing policies.
Change this to with further review. Is that what you said?
Mhm.
I think that's redundant from what's being said before that. we're asking council to direct commission staff to review the policies and return with considerations. I'm not clear what is new being added.
Well, I'm thinking that there will be things happening in the park because of number of visitors that the council will have no visibility to. And so the council directs the commission and the staff to review existing policies with regards to Foothills and return to council with considerations. I guess that's okay.
But consideration of these and other existing policies or something.
I'm sorry, which one are we editing? Oh,
Or
3.
So I think
Or-
council has already directed us to review existing policies and to return to them with an update.
Okay.
Okay.
yeah, I think this works.
Okay, so are we ready to have a motion to vote? Would somebody like to make a motion?
Sorry, Darren, could you scroll up to 3 again? Just trying to read the new part.
Sure.
Thank you. How about along with consideration of other existing policies? Does that convey the same thing and maybe more clearly?
I think so.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I don't hear any more discussion, so can we, would somebody like to make a motion on this?
I'll make a motion that we adopt the recommendations as listed for city council to consider.
And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Wow. Lum, may I ask you to call for a
Yes.
vote, please?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Yes, voting on the motion as presented and just discussed, this would be Chair Cribs,
Yes,
Vice Chair Greenfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Lemare,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
and Commissioner Moss.
Yes.
And the motion passes on a 6-0 vote.
well, congratulations to everybody. Very, very well done. Okay, I want to talk a little bit, if we can move on to about the ad hoc committees and the liaisons. A couple of years ago, we decided that,
Wait, and can I ask one question about time frame? Because in his staff report, he talked about the time frame being April and July, something like that. And is there no way to speed that up or to get an additional one? Go over the timeline one more time, now that we've made that motion, passed that motion.
Just a second, but I think it was that we would try to get this onto the May council agenda for the motions you just passed. And then we would revisit the overall discussions, the things we've put on our buckets 2, 3, and 4 in July for a PRC meeting.
Darren, I'm looking at the tentative timeline that you presented, and it says council to review the March 23rd PRC recommendation on Foothills Park policies in May 2021. And if city council discusses the recommendation at the May 3rd meeting, and approve an ordinance that would take effect on June 17th. And so then and that's all that's listed specifically in the staff report.
And
for this item.
And so in May, when it goes to the city council, if they have issues or problems or they want further research, what happens then? And what about a second reading?
If they have additional research they'd like done, we'll do as council directs. The second reading of an ordinance will happen 2 weeks after, and then will take effect 31 days after that.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, David?
Yes.
Okay.
I also want to add that the timeline has been significantly accelerated for all of the work that's been going on here for many projects that I've been involved with and seen happen. And it's one thing for the commission to be putting in the work, but it's another thing when we consider the burden this creates on staff. And staff has done an incredible job in keeping up with this, and as well as their normal workload and dealing with a pandemic. And so I feel very comfortable that the timeline that we're suggesting and the pacing is right to give staff a little bit of a breather on Foothills Park, frankly, and the ad hoc can do some work to more thoughtfully do some digging in on things. But I support what Darren has suggested.
The ad hoc may want a little bit of a breather too, Jeff, so.
And Chair, before we move on, if you'd indulge me, I'd just like to acknowledge the ad hoc and thank them for their long hours. They were pulling together meeting after meeting late at night, in the middle of their dinner, and just so gracious with helping. They did a lot of the legwork themselves, and just want to reiterate my gratitude to all your hard work and effort. It's deeply appreciated.
Well, I think it's appreciated on all sides. That's what I would say. So thank you to everybody.
And as long as we're handing it out, I think we should include the rangers and the staff at the open space areas for all their continuous effort in supporting what we're working on as a commission, and also the task forces that are working on different issues, in many cases with support from the ranger staff.
Excellent. Okay, continuing on our business. Number 4 has to do with the ad hoc committees and the liaison updates. To refresh everybody's memory, I think it's been 3 years that we decided that it would be good to have some of the ad hoc reports in writing. And so a form comes about a week before each commission meeting. And I think some of us scramble to fill in the blanks and some of us don't get to fill in the blanks. And I'm wondering now if we could have a couple-minute discussion about whether that's the best way to convey information around what the ad hocs are doing. I think that it's really clear that not only around Foothill Park, but or Foothill Preserve, that there's a lot of good work being done at the ad hoc level. And I'm not so sure that we might want to consider moving the ad hoc reports up in the agenda before we get so tired and it's approaching 11 o'clock that we'd like to just have a motion to adjourn. And perhaps I would look to Darren for thoughts, but perhaps after the department report, if the ad hoc reports could go in there and schedule maybe 20 minutes. And if we don't need it, we don't need it. What would you all think about doing that? Or are you comfortable with just filling in the forms and not really paying, it feels like not paying too much attention to them? So thoughts?
I think we lost Darren again. But I think that's a great suggestion because it kind of would fit with the flow of the staff report as well, right? Where it could come right after and shed some light on some other things that are going on before we get deep in the agenda.
Well, I'd like to.
I like the idea of a deadline and what Commissioner Olson just said. I think that having a deadline clarifies the thoughts for me. What did I do this month? And there turns out there's a lot more than you think.
Yes.
And it goes, it sort of goes right over your head. And so forcing me to say something does clarify my thoughts. But at the same time, it sure would be nice to have a little bit more time on those things, especially since we have so many ad hocs that are not Foothills.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to try to do both. I'd like to have Catherine or somebody send out the form with the date that it needs to be done to be included in the packet. And then I'd like to see when Darren comes back, if I guess he is back, he's the co-host now, if we could move the ad hoc reports and take 20 minutes and put them up after the department report before we start on the business, if that's okay. Darren, are you with us again?
I am. My apologies. I don't know what's going on. I missed the last bit on that. Were you suggesting we want to change the agenda so that we have the ad hoc report?
I was right
Okay.
after your department report, and just allocate 20 minutes. I don't know that this is going to work or not. Allocate 20 minutes for discussion among the commissioners so that different people can see what and understand what different people are doing in the ad hocs, because I think it's good for everybody to know. So, and if there are any liaison reports at the same time, that could happen there too. Maybe we need 30 minutes instead of 20 minutes, and maybe we don't need any time and it won't work, but I'd like to try it if that's okay with everybody. Okay, cool. That's good. All right. Well, that's all I have. Were we going to do any liaison comments today or not?
Up to you, Chair, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, I had just a couple of comments. First of all, I attended the Youth Council meeting last Tuesday. It's so impressive what our youth are doing in this time of COVID. They've done an amazing study on mental health, a survey that they got 200 plus participants to respond, and they'll be releasing that soon. I invited them to perhaps in the next couple of months, if we could make a spot for them on the agenda, Darren, it would be really nice. I think especially coming out of COVID, I continue to be concerned about the effect of COVID on our kids. And I know that other people on the commission share that point of view as well. So that's the Youth Council. I also attended the Park and Recreation Commission meeting, and they are very graciously going to support everything that Recreation Community Services wants to do in terms of community activities with their budget. So kudos to them. And then the last thing is our favorite subject, aquatics, coming out of the pandemic now, and hopefully we'll see more people in a lane rather than just one as the restrictions lift a little bit. So more on that later, because it is a source of concern. There's not enough water in the city. They need more water time. So those are the 3 liaison reports that I wanted to bring up. And if anybody else has anything to share, let's take a couple minutes and do that.
I have a couple items.
Go ahead.
There's an update for the Tidegate ad hoc. The CEQA MND mitigated negative declaration is likely to be considered for adoption by the Valley Water Board at their next, at a meeting on April 27th. Once that is approved, that clears the way for Valley Water to come to back to the Parks and Rec Commission for the park improvement ordinance required for the construction that they're looking to do. And secondly, there is some new signage that Valley Water has been circulating that will be used to highlight the work that's being done at the area, and specifically to note the impacts of various trail closures that will be happening periodically over the next few years.
Great, thank you very much.
Darren, do you have anything to add on that?
Oh, I think you got it, Chair, Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then a brief field users liaison update. I've been working with staff to clarify guidelines to maintain the new field and track at Cubberley Stadium. Essentially clarifying guidelines to keep inappropriate items off of these surfaces as we're returning as teams are returning to play and use these new surfaces. This is a new field and track that hasn't been properly appreciated given what's happened the past year.
Yeah, there are particularly fitness courses where they will drag very, very heavy objects around the field. And I try to keep them off the field and off to the side, but it's been a problem. And also throwing medicine balls and throwing javelin kind of devices. So it's something that needs to be clarified to people. And in addition, there have been classes that are just like with the tennis people. There are classes being taught by people that are not registered to teach. And so the ones that are registered have issues with that. So all that goes to Adam, good old Adam.
And Chase Hartman as well has been working with that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for all of that.
Chair, I'd like to say one item about the recreational opportunities ad hoc, and that we met with Adam Howard, and echoing some of what Darren said, as we move to orange tier, their team seems ready to pivot and open up more recreational opportunities. That includes different ideas for the upcoming summer, but also seeing a great uptick in field use and field reservations by a variety of sports. So, hopefully we continue on this positive trend with our tiers, and Adam certainly seems and his team seem ready to respond.
Great, thank you.
I have one thing about Cubberley, and that is that the Friends of Cubberley spent a lot of time lobbying during the last election in November, the different city council members to take a more active role in communicating and working with the school district to just keep moving forward, even if we don't have money. And both the city council and the school district have responded. And this last week or two, there is a subcommittee from the council that has been formed, and a subcommittee on the school district side that has been formed to start working again together on that. And one of the catalysts was that PG&E issue, looking at that very empty parking lot in Cubberley that's been empty for years, and saying, well, nobody needs this. Let's just do eminent domain and use it for our purposes. So I think that was a catalyst on the school district side that maybe they should keep working towards this goal that we have.
David, do you know who's on those subcommittees?
I have it somewhere, but I think Koo and Cormac are two, and Du Bois are on the council side. And I can't remember the two people on the school district side. I wish Keith were here tonight. He would remind me who they are. So that just happened this past week and a half.
That's good. That's good, because one of the things that we probably want to bring up at some point that is very clear in our master plan is continuing to look at shared facilities between the school district and the city, and how we can do better than we have in the past. And the fact that COVID does present an opportunity with all of its challenges. So it may be the time to start thinking about having that discussion. So just bring that up. Okay, if there's nothing else but this is great. So I think maybe this trial will work out pretty well to do some sharing with the different ad hocs and the liaisons. The tentative agenda for April 27th, Darren.
Thanks, Chair. I think we'll just get together with Chair and Vice Chair and staff and determine that. Right now, I don't have anything earmarked.
Okay, I think that's great. Good.
Sounds good.
Good. Any other comments or announcements from any of the commissioners? Okay, well, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I would like to say that we should have some sort of acknowledgement of the great work done by the staff and the ad hoc committee and all the commissioners in having this really good discussion, passing this motion, and noting that it is now 8:35. And as many years I've been on the commission, I don't think there's ever been an adjournment at 8:35. So I think it's well deserved for everybody on the ad hoc and certainly for Darren and Lam. So thanks very much to everybody. And could I have a motion now to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
So moved. And Lam, would you like to take a vote?
I sure will. Thank you, Chair Cribs. Chair Cribs,
Yes, of course.
Vice Chair Greenfield,
yes, thank you.
Commissioner Moss,
Yes.
Commissioner Olson,
Yes.
Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
and Commissioner Mayor.
Yes.
6-0 vote to adjourn.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the springtime, everybody.